why the Dutch collective is in a desperate need for some ancestral healing. So I hope you are ready for it, because God blessed me with ADHD, and it's for a very good reason. Because sometimes I feel like my mind is opening up to a web of consciousness, or perhaps to an infinite vibrational library of information and knowledge and wisdom that is sometimes exposing itself to me in a complete chaotic and in a disordered way. And as an old soul, I must, in order for humanity to evolve, find some kind of order in this mess. Because Europe right now is in crisis. And this crisis is coming from the United States. Who was responsible for the development of the United States to as we know it right now? That is of course because of Europeans. Because if it was to the Native Americans, America would still have their roots in an animistic way of life. And we have completely displaced and destroyed that animistic way of life. So let's explore where exactly that is coming from, because it seems that this crisis is kind of like a karma that is currently being played out. So I hope you are ready to dive deep, have a coffee, have a cup of tea, so we can discuss to see what is really going on. As I just mentioned, God blessed me with some ADHD, but in the way I like to see it is basically like shamans of the world from our past. They all had like some kind of schizophrenia or autism or whatever. They had some kind of mental health crisis, so they could be a bridge between different kind of worlds to bring the spirit world into our normal way of life, our reality of what people believe that this is what life is all about. But if you are also kind of like considering yourself as an old soul, dedicating yourself to the path of shamanism, Animism, our Germanic, Nordic heritage, or perhaps you could also see yourself, you are dedicating yourself to the path of Odin, the archetype of the king of all warriors, the king of masculinity, the king of and the god of knowledge, wisdom and healing, then you also really might consider yourself like you gotta go and isolate yourself to dig into this web of life, the building blocks of our cosmology, to bring order in this infinite library that is all around us. Because at one spectrum of modern day life, of what we think that our world is really based upon, we see that that world is kind of like collapsing on its own through social control, politics, governments, economics, the financial crisis, and all the different kind of crises that we currently see. Is that people feel more stuck, more isolated, more disconnected from themselves, from others, the world around them. And I feel like whatever they are living right now, they don't even feel connected with the world they live in. So this could be a sign that something is currently going on. What is going on is that there are multiple realities, multiple states of consciousness, perhaps different realms or different dimensions that are working simultaneously within this present moment all in once. That means is that from our day-to-day life we could almost see is that there's no past, there's no future, there's only the present, and only within the presence we can go into a linear, we can tune into different states of being. And what it also means is that we can also look to different time zones that is also kind of like influencing right now within this very moments. And that is really like what is our world built upon and what can we learn from it. It almost seems as that history is right now it's repeating itself. So what can we learn from these lessons from our ancestors so we can break free from these repeating patterns that we see in our world. Of all the crises that are currently going on, I'm not going to mention this because I've made other videos about that. Because what we need to look into is this whole ancestral lineage that has been passed over from to generation. Now I could say, okay, so I'm diagnosed with ADHD, it's like a modern thing, but so many modern issues are currently popping to the surface, from stress, chronic fatigue, burnout, bore-out, depression, ADD, ADHD, nervous system breakdowns and all of it. But part of it is of course genetics being passed over from our parents, grandparents. ADHD might also come from a genetic thing which happened in the brain. For example, my mother almost tells me when I was being born or conceived, she always felt fearful about me coming into this world, but she also felt like kind of like a higher state of being or consciousness that was bringing someone to this world, of doing a particular kind of work or role. And in that way she also kind of felt connected. But later on, of course, I also went through the crisis that happened within my own family, where I had to stood my grounds and go through my own patterns of survival and all of that. So also that can influence the brain, the mind, the spirit, the nervous system, causing now all these modern day things that could also help us to look through different states of being, different states of perceiving reality, of looking at the way we have this one reality of modern day culture that is currently being forced down, where more people are being pushed back into their survival state of being through economics, politics, the financial crisis, inflation, cost of living, housing crisis and all of that. So we are more stuck into our fear-based, survival-based consciousness. But also realize that it's also like a game being played out by perhaps another form or state of consciousness that wants power, control and all of that. And we could say we live in this world of the Hunger Games, where there is some kind of elite building a top-down society or culture, like an empire, feeding themselves off based on our fear and all of that. But seeing yourself as a blessed person because you have access and the potential to tap into a knowledge and a wisdom that can help you to break through this matrix that we call modern day society or culture. And then you come here to the path of shamanism, looking for the old ways as an old soul, looking for multiple states of reality and consciousness, and multiple states of our existence, of human life and human history. And then we come to the conclusion of, so what does it mean to be a European in this day and age? Because if we look to the modern day European existence, like take the Dutch society, Dutch culture, and it's not only about the Dutch culture, Dutch society or Dutch collective, because if I speak about the Dutch collective, we have planted our seeds all over the world. Because if I would only talking to the Dutch speak English but nobody speaks Dutch, but we brought our collective all over the world and we have left our mark all over the world, and we have caused things in the world that influenced many civilizations around the world, and I will get that to the moment. Because as I have been mentioning quite a few times, right now we're entering the fourth industrial revolution, which is kind of like a new digital era of new technologies being developed, like artificial intelligence and blockchain and different kind of digital economic systems that are currently being created and produced. Because we are coming out of the era, the third industrial era, which was of mass production. And global trade since 2020 has slowly been declined, as we are now moving into a new era where we like to use things around global warming and climate change as the main theme to create a new kind of world. But of course I don't have to explain you, as a very old soul and conscious being, that is also being misused or abused to create things that is more about controlling the population. Anyway, let's move on. The third industrial revolution came, of course, the era of mass production out of the second industrial revolution, which was all about commerce and trade. The Dutch Golden Age was basically the era where the Dutch invented modern-day capitalism. Because throughout that time, in the time of the East Indian Company and other trading companies like the West Indian Company, it was the first and the largest corporation ever known in our recent history, with a worth of over 9.7 trillion guilders or US dollars, I'm not quite sure, which is more than right now the 10 largest corporations in the world, and that was only like one corporation. And that is because the Dutch were innovators in terms of banking and financing their shipbuilding endeavors and merchant trades and financing their commerce and trading journeys. But what we had to do in order to win the trade against our own favor is, of course, to compete, conquer and dominate the trades and fight against other European nations like the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, the English, through, of course, making lots of collateral damage against local civilizations and local tribes around the world. In Asia, Indonesia, South Africa, West Africa, and of course the West Indian Company was also responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. Over 16 million people have been shipped from West Africa towards the West Indies of South America, the northern part of Brazil, Suriname and Central America, but also colonies in North America, around the Hudson, New Amsterdam, which is now known, of course, as New York, around the Delaware area. And what we as the Dutch used to do is to bring liquor and spirits and intervene the trade with Native Americans. And of course, we all know what the liquor and the spirits did to the Native Americans. We robbed them from the connection they had with their spirit, with their animistic way of life, by bringing alcohol and liquor to their existence. But this whole era of trade and commerce and colonization and human exploitation and warfare, this is actually coming from our first industrial revolution, which was the time of the Roman Empire, where all of North European civilizations, think about the Indo-Europeans, the Germanic people, the Celts, the Nordic, the Baltic, the Slavic, they all had, of course, their spiritual tradition and religion rooted as well in animism. And of course they had various practices in shamanism, and they worshipped different kind of gods and spirits and deities, which is now known as modern day paganism. But of course it had the roots throughout that time. But of course the Roman Empire had different beliefs of making progress, and all these tribes were basically being killed and slaughtered. All our spiritual and cultural tradition and heritage were completely displaced, were being cut away from their roots and being destroyed. All the books were being destroyed with all our history. And of course, a modern religion around Christianity had to take over all of the north of Europe. And then Christianity completely branched out into different kind of Christian religions, like here in the Germanic lowlands or Nederland lowlands, Netherlands, of course had their religion in Calvinism. And within Calvinism it was believed that if you work hard you can make progress. And this of course evolved from the agricultural era, from fishing and farming. We evolved in becoming merchant traders. So this is something that our modern day world is based upon. Our world is based on the merchant trader, the priest, the politician and the banker. That's really what the Dutch collective is built upon. But now we feel so incredibly disconnected from ourselves, from our land, from our nature, from our spiritual and cultural heritage, that we feel somewhat disassociated from the world around us. Like we live in some kind of dream, but the world we live in, it does not feel right anymore. We even start to believe that humans don't even belong on this planet anymore, that we are some kind of hybrid, that we are being brought upon this world as DNA, and that we have been genetic manipulated in becoming like a vessel of blood and flesh. But within that we of course we have the spirit, and in some way that we have the potential to connect with these different worlds that live simultaneously within each other, or that we could connect with higher levels of intelligence, let it be a more advanced civilization or advanced species or intelligence that are also working within us. But it also means this, of course, is that we can also connect with divine archetypes. That is not, we could say it is a god or a spirit or a deity. It's not something that is up there or outside of us. It is a cluster of collective consciousness, an archetype that exists within and it exists around us. And if we dedicate ourselves towards a specific kind of path that could describe this kind of archetype, then that is the way to integrate more of this. But back to ancestral healing. Where to start, where to begin? Ancestral healing is, once again, it is really looking and to become really aware about our ancestral past. And this really begins at taking full ownership, responsibility and accountability towards healing the patterns that has been given to you by your previous generation. First of all, your parents. Whatever it kind of like abuse you have experienced, let it be emotional neglect, emotional abuse, whatever it is, your trauma that has caused right now your modern day health challenges, ADD, ADHD, the list goes on. First is have a look at this at the first place, because how more we heal and we go through these different kind of layers, of course there will always be new layers that will come to the surface, that will pop to the surface, because right now we live in the time of the apocalypse, which means is that the unseen truth is coming to the surface, like all our trauma that exists within the body, that has been stored as a state of energy expressed in emotions. We have been holding on to this for years and years and years, if not hundreds of years, and we have been holding on to this like a balloon of air, pushing it on the water, and right now it is popping to the surface. And that is like the unseen truth is being revealed, is coming to the surface. And this is really like what part of this whole ancestral healing journey is about. Is that what we have been holding on to? Is we never really wanted to look into this. Is now coming to the surface. And for those who have been on this path of self-development and spirituality and self-healing and all of that, maybe you have been just like me diving into New Age spirituality, or perhaps you've been looking into different kind of spiritual religious practices that feels holds the most level of truth to you, because it feels the most native to you. It is what your ancestors were connected to, and they have kind of like built the foundation for you. But if we don't bring awareness to what kind of foundation we stand on, then it's very difficult to find some kind of groundingness within this realm, in this reality we are currently living. So how more we are lifting the veil of our past, whether it be the past and the history of our European ancestors and everything that happens to these lands, learn about our history, which is also part of this ancestral healing journey. How more awareness is being created, we can look, of course, at this from different angles and different perspectives. Not only see it as, oh, it's all bad, it's all wrong, because our ancestors did what they had to do in order to survive in that time. And if we can develop higher levels of understanding, compassion and empathy, then these are the abilities that we need to give healing to our past, because if we can heal that past, we can heal ourselves. And this is also exactly right now needed, because within North European regions, of course, we are a melting pot of loads of different kind of cultures and different spiritual beliefs and religions that all try to live within each other. But if there is a lack of understanding and empathy and compassion, then what we do is we do exactly what has happened in the past. We go and fight against each other. We continue to fight against each other because we don't understand each other, which is coming, of course, from a level of fear. And once again, this is matrix that is being created for us. It wants to push us into our lower states of consciousness, this fear-based, survival-based consciousness, where humans are being played against each other to fight, to compete, to dominate against each other for our survival. Because what has been created is, of course, lack and scarcity, and that's why we must fight and compete against each other. And there are now so many different perspectives are being created that is causing more confusion about who we are as a human species, is that we will find something that we can fight about. Right now there are like 4,000 different kind of religions in the world. But once again, I think what right now is very important is that we as North Europeans start to recognize, so what is really native to us? Whether you are from the Germanic region, the Netherlands, Germany, all the way up to Denmark and Scandinavian region, or the British Isles, the Celts, and all of these different tribes that used to live there before the whole Roman conquer and quest came in, that gave us that seed, that they gave us a new seed that we have continued to play out, and that is currently still being played out against humanity. There is still an empire, a force that wants to control and dominate and push us further down into this lower state of being. So the power really lies within us. Is that yes, we live in a very individualistic culture. There are millions of people living here, but everybody feels alone. Everybody feels isolated. Everybody feels like they are like a tiny little drop of water, isolating from their source, isolating from their ocean. But every tiny little drop of water makes the ocean. And this is the realization that we have to go through. And I think right now is the very most crucial time in our history, is to recognize and appreciate where we came from. The worlds that has been built before us, about the building blocks of our cosmology and our place here in this existence. Because that's for us the way to ground our roots. Because also, of course, what we are seeing right now, that loads of North European people are now migrating out of their native lands because of all the different kind of crises that we see. The inflation, the cost of living, the housing crisis, the list goes on. So yes, we live in a digital information era where we can provide ourselves economically using technology and the internet, which gives us the opportunity to move somewhere else where we don't have to depend on working for a local job, because a job is only meant that you stay here in this construct of limitations, because it is just giving you enough just to survive and to get by, but never really enough to really truly thrive. Because many people, they want to feel connected to a calling or to a purpose, and is to connect with a contribution of giving something to the world. But once again, they are being pushed back in this never-ending cycle of survival. But we all want to feel like this tiny little drop of water that is reuniting and reconnecting with his ocean of infinite awareness and possibilities. Because an ocean, of course, can create waves and tsunamis of transformation. And that's really kind of like the potential that lies within us. And we can only ignite that potential or reconnect with that potential if we learn about the old ways. The ways our ancestors have built before us bring understanding, awareness and healing to our past, so we can optimize our present. And through this whole optimization process, it is like we can switch on the engine, our minds. We can switch on this engine, which can be like a high performance engine, and we can fuel it with the right kind of energy, the energy from source, to drive our vehicle, which is our body, our physical presence that moves us around in our third D reality, third dimensional state of being. And this, of course, can also be implemented in a business or in a purpose or in something that we want to bring out in the world. Because we have, of course, the primary purpose, which is the mastery of self, and our secondary purpose, which is that what we want to bring in the world. And that what we want to bring in the world is always a reflection of who we are and who we are becoming throughout that process. It will always be a two-way street of a constant way of improvements and self-actualization and self-realization, and the process of never-ending integration of who we really are and who we were always meant to be. Because we have forgotten who we really are, and we're here to simply remember. So hopefully it was helpful. Of course we can go on for hours, but this is really kind of like the work that I want to bring out on this channel, is the revival of the animistic and shamanistic way of life our North European ancestors used to be connected with, but of course has been displaced and cut away from his roots. And that's why we feel so spiritually bankrupt right now, because that's a result of what used to happen thousands of years ago. And because of that pain, that void that was created within us, we have been continue to play out this power struggle hundreds and thousands of years after that. But yet we can look for it from endless perspectives, and we can also, of course, gain information, knowledge and wisdom from it. Because even within the Dutch Golden Age, despite the fact of what happened, we can also look like, hey, we can collect our merchant trading mindsets out of it and tap into the merchant trader into a state of commerce and trade, because this is also very much needed in the world that we still live in and we continue to live in. So let me know your thoughts about this whole topic. I know it's a lot of information, it's a lot of process, but this is something that we continue to expand, and we continue to dive further into this. So let me know your perspective, and also, of course, make sure you subscribe to this channel, leave your comments, so we can build a community around this and expand our consciousness and reconnect with our ancestral roots. Alright, Jean-Paul here, and I will be signing off for now.